Judge York.
All right, thanks, ladies and gentlemen. You may be seated at this time.
Stand up.
Yeah, shit.
Just give me 1 second here.
Why should we all fucking rise? Suck my
All right, today we are here for the State of San Andreas versus Pavel Chekov. This is case number 21-19082. For the court reporting, prosecution, and then defense, please state your names.
Kennedy Cartwright, ADA for the state.
How Flip stated his
Bob Michaels, public defender for the defense.
Is Mr. Noonan included in this?
Yeah, Chance Noonan, LSDA's office, Your Honor.
Thank you. And Mr. Chekov, thank you for being with us today. Okay, let's start with the reading of the charges, prosecution.
The charges are PC 2222 manslaughter, PC 33. I'm slow. PC 3301 possession of firearm without weapons license. PC 3302 possession of an unregistered firearm.
Do you need a moment, ma'am?
This isn't funny.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
This is
all right. Mr. Michaels, what is the plea from the defendant?
The defendant pleads not guilty.
All right. All right, prosecution. Let's begin with opening statements.
On November 3rd of 2021, a 911 call came into dispatch from a local stating, "Help, someone just got stabbed." This can be seen as submitted in evidence as Exhibit 1. The next call to come into dispatch was from the defendant, Pavel Chekov, stating, "I think I just kill a man." This is seen in evidence as Exhibit 2. A third call was received by dispatch again from the defendant stating, "The guy I stabbed is dead." This can be seen in evidence as Exhibit 3. A final 911 call arrived to dispatch from the defendant, which stated, "Guy still dead here." This can be seen in evidence as Exhibit 4. Officers were dispatched to the location of the 911 call. Major Kavor Arnom was first to arrive, followed almost immediately after by Johnny Bandini. The officers found Pavel Chekov standing over the deceased man, who was later identified as Angus Martin by his identification found on his person. Mr. Chekov informed them that the deceased had insulted him, and as things escalated, a fight broke out between the two. The defendant then pulled a knife and stabbed the victim 3 times. The defendant was placed under arrest by Johnny Bandini and searched incident to arrest. Bandini took into evidence the possessions of Pavel and then took the weapons off of him. Bandini asked the defendant if he needed medical treatment, which he declined. The defendant was transported to the station. The officers called in Christian Stabler to conduct an interview in which myself was present to oversee. The defendant was read his Miranda rights and informed the detective that he would waive his rights to a lawyer and begin the interview. Christian Stabler conducted the interview in which, again, I oversaw to ensure that all procedures were followed. During that interview, the defendant stated that he was getting to know the city when the deceased Angus Martin made a derogatory statement towards him. The defendant stated that Angus shoved him and then attempted to punch him. Pavel stated that in his interview, he avoided that punch and pulled out his knife to defend himself. Chekov stated that he did not attempt to de-escalate the situation by leaving due to his Russian pride. Chekov also informed the detective that he did not attempt to fight with his fists and resorted to a knife because he is not a good fighter and did not want to lose a fight. The state is pressing the charges of manslaughter, possession of a firearm without a weapons license, and possession of an unregistered firearm. The Penal Code defines manslaughter as unintentionally causing the death of a person without malice aforethought. The defendant escalated the level of weaponry in a fist fight and brought that fight to a lethal level, causing the death of the victim. The defendant, even if he was intending to defend himself against a man who was using only fists, took his defense too far. He stabbed the man 3 times. He was also in possession of the unregistered firearm and did not have a weapons license. A man died due to the actions of the defendant. He was again stabbed 3 times. The defendant was unharmed in the scuffle and yet stabbed the man not once, not twice,
Oh my
but
God.
3 times. This action went beyond self-defense alone and was reckless of the defendant. The state will show that the defendant caused the death of Angus Martin and therefore should be found guilty of manslaughter, the unregistered firearm, and the lack of the weapons license. Thank you.
How much times was he stabbed?
Thank you, prosecution. Mr. Michael's opening statement for defense.
Yes, ma'am. Your Honor, members of the court, in this case, we feel that justice was wrongfully handed out to Mr. Chekov. Mr. Chekov was unfairly charged with manslaughter, possession of a firearm without a weapons license, and possession of an unregistered firearm. The court should take into effect the fact that Mr. Chekov was using mere self-defense in an incident on November 3rd, 2021. Defense is willing to show that Mr. Chekov moved up the force escalation process known to law enforcement, not only to protect his life, but the lives of surrounding civilians. Mr. Chekov could have easily skipped force escalation and went to his pistol. However, he did not. He was being attacked by the deceased with the use of 2 deadly weapons, which were clearly shown in State's Exhibit 12D. It not only shows that the deceased was trying to defend himself, but also uses his hands as weapons to try and mangle, if not even kill, Mr. Chekov. For example, in Texas state courts, Staniel versus State, that a floor could be considered a deadly weapon when a defendant slammed the victim's head down upon it. So in this argument, Mr. Chekov could have used the floor to render the deceased attacks null and void. It is often said that boxers or MMA fighters have to register their hands as weapon, and stories and rumors would say that you are correct. No, we're not saying that the deceased was an MMA fighter, but of any kind. But who is Mr. Chekov to know who he's being pummeled and resorted to defend himself from? Now, getting back to the MMA fighter question, they don't have to register their hands as lethal weapons, only except in the actual U.S. territory of Guam. In Turner versus State of Texas, the court showed the following felony murder information charged to pertinent part of the appellate on the August 17th, 1980, did unlawfully then and there unknowingly and intentionally cause the death of Tona Maria Logan, an individual hereinafter called the deceased, by striking the deceased with his feet, by choking the deceased with his hands, and by kicking the deceased with his feet. Based on the court ruling, Mr. Chekov was correct in moving to the line of force, which included a knife, being that the attacker was using his fists, his hands, and feet. Moving on, the prosecutor charging the defendant with a crime such as assault with a deadly weapon must prove not only that the defendant assaulted the victim, but also that the weapon was indeed deadly. The physical qualities of the weapon, as well as the manner in which the defendant wielded are important factors in the fact finder's decision. In this case, members of law enforcement community have made a tragic and strategic error in charging Mr. Chekov. In Exhibit 6B, the medical examiner's report shows the court record that there was blood and skin found under the fingernails of the deceased. How could this be if the deceased did not put up any fight with his arms, legs, hands, or feet? This evidence clearly shows that the deceased used them as weapons, trying to maim, injure, and possibly even kill Mr. Chekov. The defense also has one last question for the prosecution, and why the deceased had .556 and .762 ammo on his person. To me, this shows that at one time, the deceased had a weapon or weapons that could easily have fired these ammo types. So being that fact, Mr. Chekov could not have known what the assailant could have used to take his very life. Is this weapon shown in 7B? The weapons and the items shown in 7A do not match those of 7B. Finally, the defense is going to show that the charge of manslaughter cannot be applied here in the fact that Mr. Chekov was not out to kill or take the deceased's life. He was merely out trying to save his own life from that of his attacker and would-be assailant. Thank you, Your Honor.
This guy's good.
Thank you, Mr. Michaels.
Ahora, jefe, espalda.
At this time, we are going to proceed with prosecution. If you would like to call your first witness.
I don't know anything. I
One
don't
moment.
know shit about Texas versus whatever. The fuck? I didn't know that. It's fucked up, Adam. That's fucked up. I mean, wow, that guy's actually really, he got some really good facts in there.
The prosecution calls Kavor Arnom to the stand.
Mr. Arnom, if you'd come up to the marshal to be
Atta
sworn
boy.
in.
What? He looks like he has a stick up his ass.
Hello.
Oh, do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
That's not how
I
to say, but
do.
okay.
Thank you.
That's
All
not how
right,
you
Mr.
say it.
Arnom to the microphone.
There we go.
Thanks.
Is this thing on? Don't answer the question.
Hello, can you state your name and your ranking to the court?
Yeah, my name is Kavor Arnom. My rank is Major of the
dumbass.
San Andreas State Police.
Can you explain to me what you witnessed when you arrived on scene?
When I arrived on scene, we got multiple calls. It was a busy night, saying that a man had been stabbed in the courtyard area just off of Davis Ave. When I arrive on scene, I see the defendant, Mr. Chekov, standing over top of a body. Yeah, that's what I saw.
Can you tell me what you heard the defendant state to you, if anything?
I approached the individual, asking what happened here. Obviously, doing a preliminary investigation as we're trying to determine, what happened. He stated that the individual, him and the individual exchanged some words, and the individual attacked him. So he defended himself.
Were you present when, or I should ask, what did you do with the deceased?
I did not personally transport the deceased. I was taking care of Mr. Chekov. I had, at the time, arrested him and brought him to MRPD for further questioning.
Did Mr. Chekov require medical?
No, I asked him multiple times if he required medical, and he said no.
Did he ever inform you that he was punched?
I do not recall if he actually stated that or not. He did state to me that he did not require medical, though.
Did he ever inform you that he feared for his life?
Not in those words exactly.
Once you arrived at MRPD, what did you do?
I can't remember if I got him set up in a standard cell in this standard processing area, or if I took him straight to an interview room. But once I did get him set up in either of those areas, I tried and I got a hold of one of our detectives for CID and asked him to come down to perform the interview on Mr. Chekov.
Okay, one moment.
She didn't even know what to say.
speechless.
The state has no more further questions, Your Honor.
State has no further questioning for this witness.
Ah, wow.
Mr. Michaels
should
for
be a
defense?
DA.
Bear with
ABA.
me, Your Honor. 1 second.
Sure.
Is it officer? Is that correct?
Trooper.
Trooper?
Major.
All right. Oop, excuse me. Did you witness the defendant attack the decedent?
No, I did not.
At any time, did you hear the defendant say, "I killed this man"?
Yes, I did.
How many times did you hear him say it?
At least once on the scene of the crime.
Okay. If somebody was to attack you, how would you defend yourself?
Depends on what they're coming at me with in the situation I'm in,
One
to
of
be
them
honest.
just left.
Let's say for a moment you were in the same position as Mr. Chekov.
Objection, speculation.
Your Honor, we're just trying to gauge the trooper's intellectual on it, what he would do in this situation.
Again, speculation.
I do believe that speculation is correct.
What is that? Is that-
I understand where you're heading, Mr. Michaels. I think you need to rephrase the question in regards to Major Arnom and his experience.
In the court.
Trooper, what would you do if somebody was attacking you with a knife?
I would shoot them.
Relevance.
Sorry.
I would object to relevance as the trooper's
Answer the question.
decisions and opinions do not matter in regards to his police work in this instance.
Your Honor, we're trying to show the escalation of force that I witnessed in my opening statement.
An opening statement is not in facts. It can literally be lied in, which I believe that he brought in inappropriate case law that is not accepted by the state too. So an opening statement should not be used as form of evidence.
Okay, so I'm actually going to overrule the objection
Yeah, sit
because
down,
in
bitch.
evidence there is a knife, and this is Major Arnhem. So if we could continue.
Hello.
Hello.
Officer, would you please answer the question?
Can you repeat the question for me, please?
What would you do if somebody was attacking you with a knife?
Someone was attacking me with a knife, and I had. Well, there's a lot of factors behind that. If I may.
Okay.
If I'm alone one-on-one and someone's coming with a knife, I'm going to pull my firearm and shoot them.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
If I have a group of my fellow officers around me, I'll pull my less than lethal taser and tase them, and then we will surround him and do our best to apprehend him before he causes any further harm to anyone.
All right. No further questions, Your Honor.
What?
Oh, my.
Prosecution, did you want to cross-examine?
Sure. Apparently
He's-
step on this chair.
Carrie's throwing. The top laner's feeding.
Major Arnhem, have you been in any knife or fist fights?
A few.
Jungle diff.
And when somebody came at you with fists,
Support.
did you
jab.
feel like you were in imminent threat of death?
Oh, that's leading.
I feel like she's
Objection, Your Honor.
wrong.
Speculation.
Leading.
And your rebuttal?
I'm going off the fact that he just finished
Well, how do you
asking
know
him
that
what he
shit?
would do if somebody came at him
I don't know any of these.
with a
objections.
knife, and in the same instance, someone came at the defendant with fists.
But I did not say the word death.
Asked and answered.
You should
Doesn't
be a lawyer,
require
bruh.
to have the exact
wonder-
wording of death
Can't
It's
involved.
so
think about-
hard.
Yeah.
It's not hard, but it's so much.
So
harder.
I'm going to overrule, but I'm going to ask you to rephrase your question.
Ooh, that's a hard one. Oh,
What question did she ask?
Ms.
you have
Cartwright?
to rephrase
Yes, I'm just processing. for
Thank you.
thinking through the yes.
What'd she ask? I didn't even hear.
Mr. Arnom, Kavor Arnom, have you, when you've been in a fist fight, how have you responded to a fist fight?
Objection, asked and answered.
I do not believe that he asked about a fist fight. He asked about a knife
I asked how he would defend himself.
against a knife.
No. Against how he would defend himself in any type of fight.
I have written here in regard to a knife. If a knife was, so I'm going to sustain and allow the question in regard to fists.
He had a good
Proceed
opening
if you
statement, but he's just
Okay. So
Yep.
it's hard to. I'll be honest. It's kind of hard to answer. Is this a consensual one-on-one fist fight? Is this out in the streets? Depending on on my line of duty and all that stuff. There's a lot of factors
no
that go
line
into
of
play
duty.
here. No line of duty, one-on-one consensual. Is that what I'm?
I would say no.
apologize,
If
I'm here for
somebody
asking
swings
answers.
at you, what would your response be?
My response would be to hit them with my taser first.
I shoot that
If I
motherfucker.
can build that distance.
Oh,
Hood guard shit.
self-defense.
And now, when you responded to the knife fight portion, in which you said you would shoot them, were you speaking in on-duty terms?
Duty terms.
Hate to say it, I'm always on duty, but even if I was not on duty, so to say, I would still respond with my lethal firearm if someone were to swing a knife at me
Oh,
or come out with a knife.
Understood. No further questioning.
no further questions, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Arnhem, thank you
You'll
very
clock
much. You
off
can
for
sit down
once.
at this time.
Always a pleasure. God bless everyone.
God bless, brother.
Lovely, thank you. Prosecution? Do you
Yes,
have
I will be calling Detective Stabler.
You should try to clock out once in a
Detective
while,
Stabler,
brother.
if you come up to the marshal to get sworn in, please.
This guy doesn't know how to say, like, I solemnly, like, nothing but the truth in that shit. He doesn't know how to say it properly. He's not even sworn in.
Marshal?
Stay.
You gotta get sworn in.
Do you solemnly swear off on the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Social distancing, bro. He's like
I do.
meters away.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Stabler, if you just come a little closer to the chair, you'll see a microphone in front of you. Perfect.
Excuse me real quick, Your Honor. Just a heads up, changed my name. It's Shaft now. Just for to get that on record. Shaft. S-H-A-F-T.
You legally changed your name?
Yes, ma'am.
Shaft Stabler, correct?
Yeah. Christian Shaft.
Oh.
Can you dig it?
Oh, apologies.
No worries.
Okay, so
I
let
can dig
the court docket show that Christian Stabler is now known as Christian Shaft. Correct?
Your Honor. Yes, ma'am.
Wonderful.
Is she from the UK?
Miss Cartwright.
Okay. Mr. Shaft, can
That's a
you
tough
state
accent.
your rank and what department you're with?
Currently, I am a supervisory marshal with the San Andreas Marshal Service.
He's a marshal
And
again?
at the time of the interview, what were you ranked as?
I was a sergeant of the San Andreas State Police and a detective in CID.
Whatever happened.
Can you explain to me what proceeded before, I guess, when you began your interview with the defendant?
Yes, I received a phone call from Major Arnom asking if I was available to take a case where someone was murdered, or killed, I should say, while being involved in a fight. More details were to come.
And
Sorry.
and then after you arrived, what did you proceed to do?
So I showed up at MRPD. There was a bomb threat there, so we actually had to transfer everyone that was inside of MRPD to the State Police Freeway Station. Once we got to the freeway station, I was given more details about the incident. With those details, I took Mr. Chekov to the cells, debriefed with Major Arnom, collected the necessary items that were collected by the two officers, or Major Arnom and another officer from the scene, and then proceeded to speak with Mr. Chekov by giving him his Miranda rights, and then being as though that he said it was okay for us to continue the conversation, asked him if he could sign a Miranda waiver, which he did sign, and I filed that away, and then I conducted an interview with Mr. Chekov.
What information did Mr. Chekov give you during that interview?
Mr. Chekov said he was new to the city, walking around, just checking out the scenery, or just getting the lay of the land, if you will, when he was approached by an individual, later to be identified as Mr. Martin. Mr. Martin made a derogatory term to Mr. Chekov, a derogatory Russian term to Mr. Chekov. Mr. Chekov said something back, and then Mr. Martin tried to swing at Mr. Chekov. Per Mr. Chekov, Martin missed with his punch, and Mr. Chekov then pulled out his knife and stabbed Mr. Martin 3 times, and then contacted the police. I asked Mr. Chekov when Mr. Martin, why did he engage Mr. Martin after the derogatory term? He said, quote, I don't know, it was probably my Russian pride. And then I asked him, why did he resort to a knife instead of using his fist to fight? And I quote, he said, I'm not a good fighter. After the conclusion of the interview, I told Mr. Chekov what he was going to be charged with, and at that time, he requested an attorney. We got in contact with Mr. Roberts. He came down to the freeway station. He had a conversation with Mr. Chekov, and Mr. Chekov had to use the bathroom, I assume, so we got him to Bolingbrook expeditedly.
And now you state that you took possession of the items from the 2 officers?
Please don't get called out.
Yes, ma'am.
And can you state what those items were? You're also welcome to reference the exhibits if you need.
We're talking about Chekov's items, not Martin's, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Chekov had a unregistered pistol, a switchblade, a baseball bat, brass knuckles, and another knife.
And did you check if Mr. Chekov has a weapons license?
Oof. No shot.
He does not, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Did Mr. Chekov in this interview ever state if the defendant if the deceased pulled a weapon?
He actually stated the opposite. The deceased only tried to swing at him once with his fist.
No shot.
He's fucked.
And
But there was blood.
did you ask the defendant if he was injured at all after that?
Mr. Chekov stated that he did not touch him at all. I did ask him if he was injured, and he said no. He even stated that I could check his injuries. in looking over Mr. Chekov, he had no visible injuries at all.
No further questioning.
Fuck though. What?
GG.
Mr. Michaels.
Yes, ma'am.
Come on.
Do I call you Officer Shaft? Is that correct?
Mr. Schaff is fine.
Okay, Mr. Shaft. Did you witness the defendant commit any type of crimes that night?
What kind
Yes.
of fucking question is that?
What were those crimes?
Unlawful possession of a firearm.
Okay, GG.
Sorry, I'm a little sick. Unlawful possession of a firearm and possession of a firearm, or I'm sorry, unlawful possession of an unregistered firearm and possession of a firearm without a weapons license.
You forgot the manslaughter.
Did Mr. Martin have GSR test done to him?
Ah, yeah, you're right.
I was not on scene for Mr. Martin's body, but I would say no.
In finding the ammunition that was on him, why wasn't there a GSR test done?
You can find ammunition in the trash cans. That doesn't warrant a GSR test.
So are you telling me that it's not policy to let me rephrase that.
Okay.
So are you telling me that I could just go out here and find in the dumpsters ammunition?
That is what I'm saying.
And even if you found it on me, you wouldn't perform a GSR test?
No. Not in, if you're not committing any other crime that would involve a firearm, or you're not suspected of being involved in a crime with a firearm, I would not GSR test you. No.
How could you tell?
Well, let's say I responded to a crime where a man was stabbed to death, and the man who stabbed him said, he swung at me. That's it. There's no gun involved. Why would I GSR test anybody?
Oh shit, he's fucked.
In my opinion, it'd be because it's your job.
My opinion.
Well,
Don't answer
No.
that. That's not a question.
But anyways,
Nah, this lawyer is fucked, bro. Like,
so let me ask you this question,
What a
Mr.
good
Shaft.
opening statement. Just thrown. Hey, look, I bet just.
If you were
snowballing.
to engage in a
The mid laner.
fight
It's just pretty
with a
much.
person that had a
It's just
knife,
pretty much a fed Yasuo.
what would your protocol do?
Oh my god, a fed.
What would your
My-
protocols tell you to do?
am I a
Guys-
cop or am I a regular
This guy's
civilian?
a feed
Regular
box.
civilian.
Useless.
I'm running
I'm running.
Why is that?
because I'm I'm very fast.
I don't know. David,
No
what?
further questions, Your Honor.
yeah, that's him.
Prosecution, do you want to cross-examine at this time?
No, I believe we're good.
All right, Mr. Shaft, thank you for your time. You may be seated.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, prosecution.
That they are.
I do not see Mr. Bandini in here, or am I incorrect?
I don't. Hopefully.
I don't.
Is
don't
Mr.
think so anymore.
Bandini
We pretty
here
much got-
or on duty
listen,
today?
We
Can someone
got
tell me?
50K pretty much
I'll
worth
check the
in
duty
other
log.
stuff. Exactly. I honestly don't even think we need that 50K anymore. That's up to the boss man though, not mine.
Not current on duty. Okay.
All right.
Then that will be, other than I would like to obviously reference the DOA report. I would also reference the exhibits and restate the injuries found on the victim, which were the 3 stab wounds, as well as the hands were inspected, and there was no. Let me look at it one more time to get what I'm saying. In the DOA report, there were no signs of any type of thing other than defensive, offensive wounds from the physical altercation. And then the 3 stab wounds specifically.
In the DOA report. What are you referencing to in regard to defensive wounds?
They're in their exhibits of the DOA report, if you need me to send them to you.
So we're talking about the items within the DOA report?
Right. I'm just upholding that the DOA report was submitted as the fact that Bandino is not present.
Okay. Just give me 1 minute, please.
Philip Walker.
Walker.
Did you just say that?
Bro, did you not see the clip of it?
Wait, was that him saying his name?
Yes, that was Philip Walker. That was
Are
so
you
funny.
referencing Exhibit
Beautiful as ever.
12D?
Looking beautiful as ever, Miss York. That's why it was so funny, man.
I just need to know the exact exhibits that.
Exhibit 12.
So
Don't see a
exhibit.
D.
Okay.
Or did you add the D?
Okay. So, for example, the DOA report was
gotcha.
accepted into evidence. Then there are 12B, 12C, and 12D, of which 2 were not accepted into evidence.
Okay. Sorry, I missed that portion.
Okay. I believe for 12D, which we're talking about the examination of hands for the wounds, that the state needed to provide body cam or photo evidence of that.
Okay, that's fine. We'll just go with the DOA report due to Bandino not being present. It was all I was
Okay.
trying to uphold.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, understood.
Was there
then that is
anything
all.
else? That's all for, so prosecution rests?
Yep.
Okay. Mr. Michaels,
Yes,
how
ma'am.
would you like
Probably
to
a bunch of fucking
proceed?
drugs. Good for
I'd like to call the defendant to the stand, ma'am.
All right. Mr. Chekov, please come up to the marshal and be
I
sworn
got
in.
Yeezys. Oh, damn.
Swag caught drip, bro.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Oh, there we go. He said it right.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chekov, there should
Well,
be a
help you
microphone
God.
right in front of you.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Michaels, your witness.
Mr. Chekov,
Watch him rat
can
himself.
you tell us a little bit what happened that night?
Yes.
I killed the man.
Was wandering around the city, you know, looking at that park or whatever it was. This man approached me, called me a Russian bitch. I told him to leave me alone, like fuck off, you know. He then started swinging at me. I felt that my life was at risk,
Fuck off.
so I fought back using the force I deemed necessary to defend myself.
He's really of a piece of dope to write this out.
Yeah, there's no way he's not reading something.
And why did you seem necessary that it was a knife instead of your fist?
Back home in Russia, I have seen several men beaten to death with fists.
Oh, they're fucking Russian.
Did the deceased ever take a swing at you?
Yes, he took a few actually.
You recall how many?
Was a little distracted, wasn't able to count them.
Okay. Did the deceased ever pull a weapon on you?
No, other than his fists and feet, which, yes.
Okay. Mr. Chekov, did you know that the decedent had 5.56 and 7.62 ammo on him?
I had no way to know.
They definitely went over this. Like from the top.
Bear with me, Your Honor.
It's fine.
Man, Summer Rae is so hot.
Mr. Chekov,
Yes,
were you in fear of your life that night?
I was, yes.
Why?
This man obviously hated Russians and was attacking me. I think right. Oh, never mind. I lost my train of thought there for a second. But he was attacking me and stated he hated Russians.
Ooh, that's a good like make it racially motivated.
Yeah. Russian lives matter.
Mr. Chekov, it's alleged by the defense that, according to one of the autopsy photos, that the deceased had blood and hair underneath his fingernails.
Objection. We just stated it's not in evidence.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, the Exhibit 12D examination of hands for wounds was pending and was never signed off because additional evidence was not supplied.
Very well. My apologies.
That's fine.
Mr. Chekov,
Yes?
why didn't you use your firearm that night?
Because it wasn't mine. I stole it from the defendant, or from the victim.
How did you steal it?
I just kind of took it out of his hand. He seemed like he was drawing it when he went down.
So are you saying
He said he stole the gun off the fucking
that the
guy who
deceased
killed
had a
him.
weapon on him?
Oh wait, no, that's actually good because the guy could have
During
said
the fight,
he
I
could have
wasn't
pulled out
able
the
to
gun.
tell.
True.
Wait, I don't know if that's
Afterwards,
good
yes,
or
I
not.
did take the
I
pistol
don't know if
off
that's
of
good
him.
or not. I'm not
The
gonna lie.
thing is, he should have said he took the gun for his own safety off the
Very well.
individual in case he got back up.
Thank you, Mr. Chekov. No further questions, Your Honor.
Hurry up and become a lawyer,
Ms.
bro.
Cartwright?
So is it true that you told the detective that there was no weapon in the hand of the defendant?
I do not remember.
Don't remember answering any questions?
I don't remember him asking that specific question.
Yeah,
But I
boy.
could be wrong.
So did the defendant have a weapon at the time that you were stabbing him?
He had 4 of them, his hands and feet. They are deadly.
Attaboy.
Why didn't say yes?
But you took the gun off of him afterwards.
God, he's a stupid.
Yes.
How many fights have you been in Russia?
Oh, here we go.
Uh,
Don't say the
a
wrong
couple.
answer.
Enough.
What fucking relevance is that?
I've seen.
Objection relevancy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've been in a couple enough fights.
Yes, enough fights.
Did you stab people in those fights too?
Objection leading.
Bro, this fucking lawyer's so
Only if
dog
they were trying
shit.
to kill me.
What would you
Say
define as
objection
somebody
leading,
trying to kill
man.
you in those fights?
Somebody attacking you and trying to beat you into the ground and kill you.
So what were the fights in which you didn't stab those people?
Bro.
Objection.
The fights usually when I did not have a weapon.
Oh my god, here we go. Yes, guys, he's fucked. He's fucked. GG.
Well,
Give me out.
usually
It
it
said
was
it was like a consensual fight.
a
like
group of people, and
it was a
the
one-on-one.
best way to survive
Oh
was
my-
to
yeah,
just let them
consensual
beat
fights in
you.
Russia.
Hope you live.
So in
brother's
which you
lawyer.
didn't have a weapon, what did you do in those instances?
Objection, relevancy,
Usually got beaten into the ground and woke up
leading.
in the hospital a week later.
How much is he getting paid?
Nothing, bro. Nothing. He's not winning this case.
But you obviously are still here alive from the beating.
Yeah, because he stabbed him, man. He fucking choked him, man.
Yes, I would hope so.
3
As
times.
I'm standing here, I would hope I'm
Fucker's like
alive.
3 times.
No further questioning.
This is
Bro, she's
fucking
done.
dumb. Fuck.
Yeah, she's done. She's.
I wanna
Mr.
clap.
Michaels, did you
Oh,
want to
never mind.
cross-examine?
Yes, Your Honor. I just have one question. Mr. Chekov, what did the deceased say to you that got you so angry?
Good one. Good one.
Fuck you, Russian bitch. And then later on, as he was swinging, I fucking hate Russians.
Yeah, that's good. That's like good.
Did he know
also
you were
called
Russian?
me a commie. Well, it's very easy to tell when I speak.
Yeah.
He called me a commie.
All right.
No, he called me a commie, and I'm very anti that.
Had you ever met the deceased before?
I did not. I was honestly shocked that he would be so rude to a stranger.
Fuck commies. Oh.
Very well. No, thank you, Mr. Chekov. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Chekov, you may be seated. Thank you.
What was that one guy's name
Yes,
that
Your
took
Honor.
over Moscow, Russia?
Defense,
II.
is there another witness or someone else you'd
Oh,
like to
World War
call?
No, Your Honor.
Does defense rest at this time?
Oh,
Yes,
the
ma'am.
Russian, like the Russian president. or
Okay,
in
so
World
with
War
both
II.
parties resting, we will be going forward to
Yeah.
closing statements.
Joseph style now.
Do both parties need a moment?
Yes, please.
Yes,
All
ma'am.
right, we will take a 4-minute recess.
Whore.
Thank you, ma'am.
Fucking Judge Judy would not approve.
All rise.
No.
Court is back in session.
Yeah, Adam, you're a bitch.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you may be seated. We're going to go ahead and proceed with closing statements. Prosecution.
The state today has shown that the defendant,
wait to
a
hear
man
what
through
they're
his
gonna do.
own admission, is accustomed to fighting. He's been in enough fights to articulate his use of weaponry, that he has been previously in
Okay,
fights
lady.
that involved fists. The defendant was not harmed by the deceased. Through his statements stated to a sworn officer of the state, the defendant was
guy's
never
done.
hit. He was only swung at. The man he was against clearly was not a proficient enough fighter that the defendant was so adept that he could dodge his fists. The defendant,
Bro, that's not
due to Russian pride
That's-
and what he has admitted to doing in Russia, also always pulls a weapon for fights when he has one. A reasonable person, when insulted, would not engage further. The defendant did not run. He was swung at but not struck by the man, and yet he pulled a knife and stabbed the man repeatedly. Even if he had feared for his life, the reasonable person doctrine should apply to the court's understanding of self-defense. Would a reasonable person, after having someone swing and missing their attempt, decide to repeatedly stab them? If we in the state allow such a self-defense doctrine, then any fistfight would be deemed as allowable to slaughter another human being. The judicial system is here to protect against just that. It is unreasonable to assume that a man who takes a swing and a miss at you places your life in imminent danger enough to stab the person not once, not twice, but 3 times. Under manslaughter, a lawful act of self-defense
God, man.
can take place. But if you act recklessly in its application, then you are guilty of manslaughter. The defendant was reckless in defending himself by pulling a knife to a man who couldn't even land a punch. Then, through his own
Fuck,
admission,
lady.
he stole the gun off of the man that he stabbed. He is admitted to the other 2 charges. Therefore, the state prays that the court finds him guilty of manslaughter, possession of an unregistered
All
firearm,
charges. You could have just said that, lady.
and the
Please.
lack of a weapons license.
Thank you, Ms. Cartwright. And Mr.
Now hurry up and
Michaels.
do your math.
Thank you, Your Honor. Today, the defense showed you a little bit about the self-defense. That it doesn't take, merely a knife, doesn't merely take a stick. It doesn't take anything really to defend yourself other than your own two hands, your own 2 feet.
What?
Really, any part of your body can be considered a
Wow.
deadly
He
weapon.
was pretty good at his opening statement. Let's see.
The
his
defense showed
conclusion.
that clearly today, the only victim, I should say victims, were Mr. Chekov and the deceased. Why 2 victims? Well, because the fact is that one died, one is now scarred for life because of the things that happened that night.
This guy fucking blows.
Mr. Chekov clearly was defending himself
He knows he's
from a
lost.
person who taunted, egged him on, and clearly wanted a fight. Clearly, the deceased wanted this fight
Possession of a firearm.
by calling Mr. Chekov derogatory Russian names
Bro, I'm not
over
take a shower
and
until we
over
get out of
and
this.
over again. Mr. Chekov tried to walk away, but with the constant taunting from the deceased, it sadly became physical. Mr. Chekov sadly has a history from Russia that, to survive in a fight, it has to become use of a weapon. I'm not saying it's right.
He's fucked up.
I'm not saying it's wrong. But sadly,
No, he fucked
that is his history.
Why?
Because if he doesn't use it, he ends up in a hospital bed
He said,
for a week or more
Yeah.
time. So again, Your Honor,
Some
the only
romantic-
outcome of this was sadly 2 victims, Mr. Chekov and the deceased. No one gains from this. Everybody loses from this. The only person that, has to live with the burden now is Mr. Chekov because of the fact that he survived this incident. But the main thing is that Mr. Chekov has made his restitution, being in jail, plans to make restitution after this with his time served, and plans to do right by his community should he be set free. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, thank you.
See how the
I'm going to be
recess is in.
taking a brief 3-minute recess and I'll
Oh,
be right back with the
that's bad.
verdict.
yeah, nah, he's getting pled guilty, bro.
I'm not gonna rise. Yep. not
All
rising.
rise.
Nope. Suck my dick. Making me
Court
wait
is now in
fucking
session.
4 minutes for this shit.
All right, you may be seated, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Chekov, please, oh goodness, remain standing.
She saw you.
Thank you. All right, so in our state, we have charges on our criminal code that we must categorize crimes to.
Who's calling me?
Although someone may kill another person in
Hello,
self-defense,
call me back.
this type of killing is
was
not
that?
always considered a crime.
Sergio.
The justice system recognizes the right of someone to protect himself or
No
herself
way.
from harm.
Nah, nah,
In order for a self-defense to apply, the defendant must have believed that he or she was in imminent danger of harm and that the use and degree of force that he or she used was reasonably necessary to protect themselves.
Let's hear it.
Mr. Chekov did not make an attempt to get away from the source of danger before exerting force in order to assert his defense. Mr. Chekov did not retreat. In fact, he verbally told Major Arnom that he stabbed Mr. Martin 3 times. The DOA report shows that Mr. Martin was heavily bruised from the stabbings And in
Russian
regard
muscle, can you say?
to the charges, the court has made the following decision.
Oh, well, boys, let's just stand up.
In regard to PC 2222, manslaughter. Once again, let me state that in our state we
Oh
have
my
charges
fucking
that we must
gosh,
categorize
no
crimes
cares,
to.
lady.
In regard
said
to
guilty.
manslaughter, and let me read the description to you.
Fucking essay is
Unintentionally causing the death of a person
Watch him have an
without
SMG in his
malice
pocket.
of forethought results when death occurs from an improper use of reasonable care or skill in commission of a lawful act, or when death occurs while in the commission of an unlawful act, not accounting to felony. I believe that you used a lawful act of defense.
What?
However, I do not believe that you used reasonable care.
Oh,
So the court finds you guilty
okay.
of
Good.
manslaughter. In regard to possession of a firearm without a weapons license, the court finds you guilty. And in regard to possession of an unregistered firearm, by your own words, you are found guilty.
Oh, wait.
We would like to move forward to sentencing at this time. State, do you have a recommendation?
Yes.
Did the math.
Through a rough accounting of the date that the defendant was arrested and today, he has served roughly 17 years. Therefore, prosecution would recommend that we grant time served and 15 more years of probation, as well as the recommended fine of $7,000.
Wait, how much? Time served, she said?
Defense? Anything in regard to the recommendation?
Yes, Your Honor. My client, unknowns to my wishes, but to his, is requesting the death penalty, Your Honor.
What did you just say?
Mr. Chekov?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is your lawyer stating the truth there?
Yes, Your Honor. The guilt for what happened is too much for me.
Give me one moment.
God damn. Shit, I would want to kill him.
That's the way to go. I was requesting that penalty, bro.
You see how the lawyer said it too.
The lawyer was like, man, fuck this shit. We got almost in 2 hours.
Not once, not twice, but 3 times. Oh my god. Wait, how many times did he get stabbed? Not twice.
Can I please have a sidebar with the prosecution and
Not once. Not twice.
You have to speak up, Your Honor.
Can I have a sidebar with the prosecution and defense, please, Mr. Michaels, Ms. Cartwright?
Oh, my hips. Damn it. Can't fit through.
Not twice.
We're going to hell. There's a special place in hell.
Oh yeah, I already got my secret set, bro. I got a preview of that shit, bro.
I got
I got
front row
pre-order on
tickets.
access.
Yeah, I got front row tickets. I got to play the alpha beta test. Man, don't give a fuck anymore. I was about to ask, be like, yo, I mean, if you about to go, let me get your Yeezys though. What size are your shoes? Should I ask him? I feel like I don't know. I want to. go, let me get you Yeezys, bro. If you don't mind. Alright, well, I'm flying. Yeah, I don't give a fuck, bro. Yo, can you open the door? Not twice.
That would cost the state less money, I guess.
No, I'm not clocked in. What's up? Fuck. Okay, I gotta go. No power. Let me know what they said.
All right, Mr. Chekov.
Yes, Your Honor.
The court is denying your request for the death penalty. This is a manslaughter charge, and it is highly irregular for a manslaughter charge to come with the death penalty. Usually manslaughter comes with anywhere between a 1 to 30-year mandatory sentence. And at this time, the prosecution has suggested that the amount of time that you have spent in jail suits the crime. So I am going to go ahead and verdict with the suggested time served and with probation of 15 years. I'm also going to recommend to your attorney that obviously this is very troublesome. From what I have heard, I am going to suggest that you receive counselling, which is available from LSFD at Pillbox Hill Medical Centre. So therefore, the sentence will be time served plus 15 years probation with a recommended counselling from the LSFD. That is my ruling. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Court is adjourned.
That's some cold shit.
You know, you guys remind me of the 1950s dressed like that.
What do I do
Look,
now?
Thank you. What do you mean?
Well,
we went to
now-
prom together.